Hey everyone, Josh Neighbors here, Locked On Big 12 podcast. Today it is the 2nd of October, 2022, and a full weekend of Big 12 action to break down. TCU hammers Oklahoma, Kansas State with a nice win over Texas Tech. A lot of points there in the fourth quarter for the Wildcats. Kansas gets to 5-0. Also, Oklahoma State wins the rematch of the Big 12 title game, and Texas just absolutely smokes West Virginia. Some big injuries happened over the course of the weekend, but there's just so much to get to. Excited to break all of it down and kind of just big takeaways from all these games as we move forward.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Once again, Josh Neighbors here, Locked On Big 12 podcast. It is the 2nd of October, 2022. We've made it. First show of October. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, like the videos, tap the bell for notifications, interact with us as well. Give us your biggest takeaways from week number 5 in the Big 12. Your thoughts about any of the games that happened, how it relates to stuff outside of the Big 12. Who did you think now are the Big 12 title favorites? Let us know in the comments section. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at LO Big 12. You guys can find me at Josh Neighbors _. Also, once again, subscribe. Trying to get to 2,300 right now. Help us get that push and get that over the edge. Every single time I come here on Mondays, I'm always like, wow, what a weekend. And this weekend, we got some clarity in some spots, but some of these results were just not shocks, especially the TCU game. But you go through TCU and Oklahoma State over Baylor and Kansas over Iowa State and Texas over West Virginia. Texas Tech versus Kansas State is really the only game this weekend that I feel like 100% met the expectations I had coming into it. And I think that's something that, in a lot of other leagues, you have that. The Big 12 is competitive, really competitive this year. It does not mean it's a bad league. It does not mean it's a great league. It's a very good league. The Big 12 is a very good league. It does not have an Alabama. It does not have a Georgia. It does not have a Clemson. Although Clemson, once again, Clemson's played 2 relatively close-ish games against good teams the last couple weeks. But Clemson's elevating their play as they go along right now. They didn't on defense against Wake Forest, but I thought they elevated their play a decent amount last night, especially on defense relative to the Wake game. But it is, you can pick 2 of 6 teams right now to be in the Big 12 championship game, and nobody is shocked, right? Baylor was picked to win the league. They have one Big 12 loss to Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State is undefeated. TCU is undefeated. Kansas is undefeated. K-State is undefeated in conference, and 2 quality wins so far. Texas is, they're 1-1 in the league, but it sounds like they're going to get Quinn Ewers back next week, and that game's really fascinating against OU. Right? There aren't a whole lot of teams that you're ready just to cross out of the Big 12 title race at this point. I feel like West Virginia is probably not going to win this league. I feel like OU at 2 losses is 100% uphill climb. I think Texas Tech, it's pretty fair to say, that's not a Big 12 title team, right? And they lost Tyler Shuck, but it's a really good, fun team to watch. They play pretty well. They're going to play pretty much everybody pretty close. Most of their games, it feels like. But I'm not going to say it's a Big 12 title caliber team. Kind of cross them out. Iowa State, you can cross out as well, it feels like, at this point in time with 2 conference losses to Kansas and Baylor. But who else are you really crossing out, right? You're not really, there's, I let you 4 teams there, but in Oklahoma, once again, I'm not going to 110% write off Oklahoma at this point in time. It's getting close. It's getting really close, but I'm not going to 110% write them off. Maybe it's because the logo on the helmet, they've earned that benefit of the doubt, I think, but you could say, Josh, it's old regime. It's not the case anymore. Sure. Yeah, you might be right in that respect. But I'm just not going to go all the way there yet. So I still think that there are, it's really, really interesting the rest of the way. Let's get into these games though, just so we can start attacking what actually happened over the weekend. Let's go with TCU. TCU runs Oklahoma is the way I thought about it. Ran them out of the building, ran the ball over them, ran up the score. They stopped running up the score at one point in time. They win 55-24. And I know Max Duggan hits that explosive run in the first half. And even with that, they ran for 15 yards a carry in the first half. They ended up running for 8.8 yards per carry in the game, and that's with a lot of the garbage time trying to slow this thing down. They racked up over 660 yards of total offense. They were 7 for 14 on third down. They hit plenty of explosive plays in this game. 9 yards per completion for them. It's really funny. When I watched this TCU team play, and I didn't think this would be the case, they're still not great. Like, Max Duggan's still not great at the intermediate passing game. He is just really good at he's a really good downfield thrower. Like, anything beyond 10 yards, he can get some velocity on or get some air under. Like, he's actually a pretty good thrower, but there's a reason why he lost the job, guys. And it's something that we talked about in the offseason too. Like, there's a reason he lost the job. If you want to talk about a quick running, quick, efficient offense like that, he's not the number one guy that you think of to do it. That's why Chandler Morris won that job. But the one thing Max Duggan has is experience. And Sonny Dykes has said this. He's a guy who did not complain when he lost that job. He did not pout. He did not do anything. He put his nose down to the grindstone, kept working. They needed him basically right off the bat. He was there in that game against Colorado. And, from that point forward, we're talking about a guy that has been lights out, been one of the best quarterbacks in the conference and best quarterbacks in the country. And like, you see this, like we're going to talk about Spencer Sanders here pretty soon, but sometimes just guys that get old and play well. Sometimes they just need that experience and they keep going and it propels them forward. And look, I'm not going to say this became, this was the guy that I thought we'd see. That's 100% a lie. Like, he's in his fourth year at TCU, man. Like, the guy has thrown for over 6,000. He's almost at 7,000 yards. He's rushed for over 1,500 yards and 21 touchdowns. He's thrown over 50 touchdown passes. Like, the guy's in the 30s or 40s. I forget what Sonny Dykes said for starts. Definitely the 30s for starts. The guy started a ton of football games. Not saying I ever saw this thing coming, but man, their plan of attack yesterday was awesome. And man, they just punched Oklahoma in the mouth. They took advantage of Oklahoma's mistakes, and that thing got ugly in the first half. That thing was ugly in the first half of that game. And so, look, they beat SMU by 8, and they were not fantastic on defense. So, as much as I love what TCU did, like, we can't 110% say it's all TCU. They deserve a ton of credit, but like, we know that they can be challenged just a bit. SMU made that game a little hairy at times. But Dylan Gabriel didn't look good. That shot from Jamoy Hodge, man, like, I tweeted this, I believe this. That should be a suspension for more than the game that he was suspended for. That's just a awful, dirty hit. That's so dangerous. It is so dangerous when a guy like Hodge takes a shot at the quarterback or any player like the way he did at Dylan Gabriel. But Gabriel didn't look good. Oklahoma's rushing numbers end up looking like okay in the end of this game, but it was not effective, man. It was not effective in this game at all. They were all out of sorts. TCU goes up 13-3, and then you get the Max Duggan 67-yard run. And then, you get the Oklahoma answer, but then it was just another answer from TCU. And then they scored again in the second quarter in 9 plays, 89 yards, 3 minutes, 50 seconds. And even though they were, they got up another touchdown, they scored one more after that. I mean, they went up and down. They were hitting explosive plays. They're going on long drives. I mean, they were, there was more intermediate kind of stuff. I mean, a lot of it was running. A lot of the running football stuff was really, really good. Max Duggan was finding all of his guys. Like, this was just an ass kicking. And I mean, you think maybe, okay, in the third quarter, you come out and it is at that point in time, it was a 24-point game. No, they blanked Oklahoma in that quarter too. I know they had to go to the backup, Davis Bevel. But it was over. They went 14 and scored 14 points that quarter. The 1 point is 55-17. And we had them tweeting, TCU was tweeting, who will get to 62 first? Aaron Judge or us, TCU, right? I mean, they beat their ass into the ground. And Oklahoma has a lot of questions they're going to have to answer. Their defense looked really strong. And I know it's Nebraska, but like they were doing a good job with assignments, except for that first drive, which they cleaned it up after that. They were tackling well. That stuff's all gone out the window in the last 2 weeks. Teams have moved the ball against them. Teams have hit big plays on them. I mean, teams can, it's too easy right now. Teams are pushing them around up front. Like Brent Venables, it's not all his fault. He's got a job to do ahead of him, man. He's got a job to do ahead of him. And I think we also, and I fell in this too, overrated how good that offense would be. Jeff Lebby's done an awesome job as an offensive coordinator, basically every single place that he's gone. And this is a little bit more difficult. This one, this is, I don't think the personnel's bad. Like, they got a lot of good players. They got a lot of good players in this team. Like Eric Gray, Javonte Barnes. There's no Marcus Major. Javonte Barnes went for 100 yards this game. I know, obviously, they empty calories, whatever. Like, they've got talented guys, and obviously, the receiving core is pretty good too. But I was working this morning with Tom Luganbill, who works with Dusty Dvorak on their crew. They had the FSU Wake Forest game yesterday, and he said Dusty went to OU, was like, I don't know what's happening, and that seems to be the common thread. Like, besides just getting handled and not playing very well, like normally you see good teams not play well and they can escape, right? OU against Kansas last year. You think about games like that where, Oklahoma can pull the escape act, Oklahoma against Tulane or Nebraska, wherever it is. This team cannot get away with that. When they don't play well, man, and some team raises their game. Oklahoma is just susceptible, gets punched in the mouth. And also, one thing we knew going into the start of the season, and this is why coaches really want to keep the quarterback depth, is that they did not have like a clear, obvious guy to be the backup. Now it's Davis Bevel, and I'm not sure how much confidence they have in him. This guy is a transfer from Pitt, hasn't played a ton of ball, and now he's their guy. I know Jonathan Williams will have it all covered. John Williams has it all covered at Locked On Sooners. And more breakdown. It's Oklahoma specific. Go to him. And also our man, Steven Simcox, has more on Locked On Horned Frogs about TCU's amazing. Once again, that was an awesome performance. Like, I did not expect TCU to be this good. Their defense played a lot better than I thought. Especially in the beginning of the game. Man, like that, what a performance. But Oklahoma, like, this is complete disarray that we're not accustomed to seeing. So I'm curious where they go from here. But TCU, will they have games this year where they don't look like this team? Yeah, sure. But the fact they had this game in them, I did not think this TCU team had this game in them. This was not on the menu for me with TCU. If you knew it, shout out to you. I did not see that coming. I said hammer and nail. I thought Oklahoma would be the hammer in this game. They've had TCU's number. I thought they would come out there and after a bad performance, hammer TCU. Not the case. Real quickly, the game that happened. Not real quick. We'll spend some time on this one. But I'm just going chronological throughout the day. Kansas State, this game, like, it's weird. If they don't hit explosive plays, their offense kind of sucks. Like, their offense can really stagnate. And they had two play touchdown drives in this game. Adrian Martinez, just when he needs it, is so good. This is the one thing we talked about. Like, if they have a functional pass, like a barely functional passing game, they're going to be so hard to beat because their defense is good. Their defense can make plays. Their defense can stand up, and their rushing attack is so good. Those two on the ground yesterday, Martinez and Vaughn combined for 240 rushing yards, 340 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns on just 35 carries. These two guys together almost ran for 10 yards a carry, and Martinez gets all the touchdowns. They both had runs of 69 yards. Nice. And so that was huge. And so, and they had 4 passing plays that I can count that went over at least maybe over 4, but they had 4 passing plays I can count that went over 10 yards. They had Vaughn caught one, Knowles caught one, Brooks caught one, and Warner caught one, like a 20-yarder. So, they were getting guys in space in situations to make plays to score in this game and to move the football down the field and score. They were not great on third down in this game. They were just, the big thing for them was they were so efficient in the running game. And also here's the kicker. They forced another 4 turnovers. On defense, they gave themselves extra possessions. And this team at times can squander those possessions. Now, against Missouri, like, they weren't cashing in on all 4 of those interceptions that we saw. But in this game, because watching this game, they forced an interception early on in the game, and then they fumble it. And then Texas Tech fumbles again, and then they punt. And then later on in the game, you had a turnover on downs that Kansas State converted into a field goal, and then a fumble that turned into a touchdown. So what we're talking about here is, and also they had the interception at the end of the game to close things out. What we're talking about here is a team that, because of how explosive their offense is occasionally and how good their team is at turning people over, like, they could be doing better than what they're doing right now. But this was good enough. I think that, once in a while, a team comes around, a team gets old, right? And this Chris Kleiman has said this a bunch. He told us this morning on ESPN radio on Sirius XM, like, this is an old team. And with that, you can have a lot of success. Like, think about the expectations for Iowa State's team. This team could be that team. Are they all the way there yet? No, not all the way there. Think about the fact they took a 13-0 lead. And then once they took that 13-0 lead, 13-0, they went fumble, punt, end of the half, punt, touchdown. Right? So, like, they didn't keep that pressure up for most of the game. They got it going again in the second half. But I'm not saying this Tech defense is much better than it normally is, but, like, they could not get off to the races. Tech came back and, they were able to tie this game up at 13. I think we're tied heading into that fourth quarter. And then Kansas State scores, I think, 20 points in 17, in the fourth. They scored 7 there in the third. But, like, that's really good. 17 fourth quarter points. I just want to see this thing more often for them, like, sustaining that, because they start punching against their weight class, man, against Oklahoma State. Yeah, that's a big one right there. Or Kansas. And it's crazy to say Kansas later on in the year. Like, I know Kansas didn't get a shot for a shot. They put Iowa State this week. But you're going to have to score, especially against, like, an Oklahoma State. Like, you got to keep up that pressure. If you let Spencer Sanders keep getting opportunities to score on you, they're going to do it eventually. So I don't want to sound critical, but, like, I this comes from a place where I think this Kansas State team can be awesome. If they just get a little bit more from their offense and they can kind of keep up that pressure like they did against OU. I think OU, that's a great example. There was some stalling, but they for the most part, they kept that pressure on the whole game. The fact that they arrived at 37 points the way they did, it was a pretty auspicious way to get there. I'll say that like that. Texas Tech, I still think they're ahead of schedule to me. I watched this game and thought they're ahead of schedule. Like, think about it like this. In the first year for Joey McGuire, he's got to get the group together. There are some older guys on defense. I know that. But, like, this Kansas State group is coalescing right now. Quarterback was kind of that final piece for them. Texas Tech's not all the way there yet. New coordinator, new coach. They're not all the way there yet. So I thought it was a really good fight for them on the road, and they were in this thing at the end. Donovan Smith, some decision-making stuff once again for him. But Xavier White had a huge day in the air especially. And Donovan Smith's going to make plays, man. They asked him to throw the ball around like 48 times. So, I mean, for a guy who's still, learning to play the game, he's got to – next year or later on in the year, we're going to see him start eliminating mistakes. I think that eventually will come. I hope it eventually comes. We're seeing it now. Spencer Sanders, like, it's happening on a much lesser extent. So I love the way Donovan Smith, like, they still put a lot on his plate. I still think he's a really good player. I love where his team's at. I think for them, 3-2 for once again, the murderer's row that Texas Tech had. Murray State, top 25 team in Houston, who may not be that good, but still 33-30 win. NC State, 27-14 loss. You were in that football game. Texas, the win, number 22 Texas, 37-34 win. Kansas State on the road, they're at Oklahoma State next week. Like, this is a gauntlet. They're acquitting themselves very well right now. All right, let's keep going. This is the big game. This is weird to think this is like the big game of the day. I'm sorry it's taking me so long to get into these games, but there's just so much happened. I mean, this should have been like the biggest result of the day that we talked about, but there's so much other stuff. Kansas gets a 5-0, obviously, and then you have the TCU blowout over Oklahoma. Like, this one kind of got buried a little bit. Oklahoma State goes on the road and wins 36-25 in a fun game that was slow at first. So there were 10 points in the first quarter, 9 points in the second quarter. There were, let's say, doing quick math here, 49 in the third quarter and 3 in the fourth quarter. I thought Spencer Sanders managed the hell out of this game. He got some really big run plays when they needed to. They got off to the lead early, and it was kind of back and forth. It looked like they almost put him away there in that third quarter. But, Baylor kind of battled back a little bit. But I thought he made the right throws at the right time for the most part, except for the interception. I thought on the ground, even though they weren't that successful, like the numbers of them offensively successful, you'd be like, oh, it's not very good. 6 for 15 on third down is like pretty meh. But this is a team that just made plays when they had to, right? They get that safety to make it 9-3, right? And then they also score at the end of the quarter to make it 16-3. It kind of put that gap out. They come out strong in that third quarter, make it 23-3, so widen that gap. They absorb the 2 touchdowns from Baylor and then come back and they score a touchdown themselves, and then they get a field goal to get back to a 16-point lead. And they get that field goal with about 4:11 or 4:48 left to go. So, they paced themselves very well in this game. The offense came when it needed to. I know it was not a sustained offense, but they built the leads they had to. They kind of almost gave them away at some points, but they kept rebuilding them when they needed to. And I think that just shows the veteran leadership of Spencer Sanders. When you got to drive or however long it needed to be, a field goal, whatever it had to be, they ended up making that stuff happen. They also got the turnovers when they needed to. They forced 2 turnovers this game. They get 2 interceptions. It's critical for them to win that battle a lot of the times, and a lot of that comes down to Spencer Sanders. When they win that turnover battle, they're going to be a really difficult team to beat. Very, very difficult team to beat when they win that turnover battle. Their defense is a playmaking defense in the back end. They can stop the run. It's just it's tough, I think, in my opinion. They did an okay job yesterday stopping the run, I think, for the most part. They can be a very good defense at times. That back end is not great. I know Harper had the interception yesterday, but that back end of that Oklahoma State defense is just not good yet. And it makes sense. I mean, they lost 8 guys, 7 or 8 starters off their defense. But Oklahoma State now, that's a top 10 team. I sold them short a little bit at the beginning of the season. I didn't think they were that good of a team, but that's a great group. For Baylor, I want to say this. People had really high expectations for the Baylor Bears coming into 2022. And that's fine. That's okay. I don't think we looked at what they lost. They lost their 2 best running backs, Abram Smith and Treston Ebner, both of which guys went on, and Ebner's right now playing in the league. You lose, I always forget who I'm talking about, the wide receiver. But obviously, it was your best wide receiver. You lose 3 guys in the back end with JT Woods, Raleigh Tejada. I'm not sure if I lost anybody else, but Jalen Petrie, who is an absolute stud. You lost him. Terrell Bernard, absolute stud. And then you switch quarterbacks. And that's a lot of transition to, kind of try to be a more explosive offense, to try and get to that point where you're making more plays downfield. You're not just a running the football team. You can run the ball, you can hit explosive plays, you can throw the ball downfield and play shape and will it sometimes, and it does work sometimes. And it worked some in this game too. But this is going to take some time. And once again, I was actually probably wrong about how long it was going to take them. But you've got guys like Presley and Monterey Baldwin on this team. Reese Wright is a really young guy. Shapen still got plenty of time left. I know for their offensive defensive lines, yeah, they're pretty old and have to work on those groups too. But Jeff Grimes never had a problem with that, and Dave Aranda and Ron Roberts on the defensive end are really good coaches. So I'm not really too worried about them coaching that side up. Now Jeff Grimes might leave, but we'll see what happens. So they're gonna be okay in the future, but they just have a lot they have to replace and work through. And this Oklahoma State group, I know they lost a lot too, but it's still eventually it was gonna happen for Spencer Sanders, man. Eventually it was gonna happen for him. He's been around long enough, and he is too talented for him to keep being the I guess lack of a better term, the screw up that he was. And I thought he managed this game very well. And I thought they got the points they needed to. He had big runs they needed to, got first downs and whatnot. I thought this was a really strong performance from him. And so with that, I don't know what their ceiling is. I know all the way their ceiling is, but Oklahoma State now, to me, because it went over Baylor, you have to think it's your odds-on favorite to go to win the Big 12 at this point. At least go to a Big 12 championship game. Tough stretch here. Texas Tech, at TCU, Texas, at K-State, at Kansas, all back to back to back to back. I think the one I'm circling, I think they can make it. I mean, TCU should be really interesting. I think they can make it to Kansas State undefeated. I'm really curious to see what a defense like that could do against Spencer Sanders. I'm very, very curious. But, I have to downgrade Baylor a little bit here. Definitely got to upgrade Oklahoma State. I thought this would be the game where it gets over the hump. They did against Baylor. I know they beat them last year, but Spencer Sanders didn't play very well against them. Thought he managed the game pretty well. Overall numbers, especially passing-wise, won't be good in the end, but he had to do what he had to do. Got the job done. All right, quick word from our sponsors here, and then we'll get to the Kansas Jayhawks getting to 5-0. Today's Locked On Big 12 podcast is brought to you all by LinkedIn. Appreciate the folks at LinkedIn for sponsoring this show. You guys know the deal. If you're hiring right now, the best place to find candidates for whatever position you're trying to fill is LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. All right, so let me get this off right here. Let me put up my thing once again. Let me take a quick sip of water. Okay, up next, Kansas. Oh my God, 14-11. Kansas Jayhawks. I mean, we'll get more into the game days. They're going to get college game day next week. They're ranked. I mean, I think Kansas State's ranked. TCU's going to be ranked too, which is actually makes the game a lot of fun. They scored 14 in the first quarter of this game and did not score again the rest of the way, and they won the game. Good teams win games in a variety of ways. 14 points second quarter. Sorry, they scored them all in one quarter, but yes. I mean, this game was not an excellent football game. But Jalen Daniels was 7-for-14 for 93 yards passing the ball. Rushing the football was a little bit of a slog today, and a slog yesterday, in that front. But the kicking was not good. They got the stops they needed to. They kind of let Xavier Hutchinson eat, but really limited, tried to do, I guess they could do the best they could to limit everybody else. Iowa State's not that good, but once again, focus on Kansas. Winning games in a variety of ways proves that you are a good team. I thought Kansas here proved that they are a good team because they won ugly. You look at their resume right now and the way that they've won games, and you go through it. Tennessee Tech obviously was a rout. West Virginia, they went down and then ended up winning that game 55-42 in overtime. They went down again against Houston, 48-30. They against Duke, 35-27, 14-11. They're winning football games in all kinds of ways. Are they battering their competition? No. I mean, let's be honest. That West Virginia game was a one-score game. The Duke game ends up being a one-score game. They were down 2 scores against Houston. That was actually their best, most pronounced win against the 4 Division I teams they've played. Was that win against Houston? It was an 18-point win. They're winning these games close, and some of them by the skin of their teeth, yes. But they're doing it in a variety of ways. Also, Lonnie Phelps is a difference maker. When was the last time KU's had a guy like that off the edge, man? He is a difference maker. The 2 Kansas schools with Felix Anudike-Uzomah made a big play yesterday. I forgot to mention that. And Lonnie Phelps, those are 2 difference makers off the edge. Got playmakers in the back end, like Jacoby Bryant and like Kenny Logan. They've got a bunch of guys who can make plays. Defense will give it up to you at times, but they held fast. They held strong. They didn't let Iowa State get too close yesterday. They missed the kick. And look, man, everybody's missing kicks. So it's not an excuse. It's not really an excuse anymore. It's kind of just college kickers just kind of out there, right? It's just kind of the way this thing works at this point in time. So what a win for Kansas. They're getting college game day against TCU, a game that they're once again dogs in. And that's a really interesting game because both those teams want to run the football. The one thing we have to look at out here for is Kansas with Highshaw. You have the injury to Daniel Highshaw Jr., so we have to see what happens there for KU. I'm not sure. It might have been carted off the field on that one. I forgot they brought the card out because I had that in the Baylor game on simultaneously. That's a huge loss. The good news for them, they are very deep at that running back position. A guy I talked about coming into the year was Kai Thomas. He's not stepped up yet to this point in the year. Very curious to see now if they can get him involved in this. He didn't have a carry yesterday. Also, what a shout out to they used Jason Bean, their backup guy who played quarterback last year. They had running plays with him. They had a design run where he was the guy, the quarterback. They had one where they handed the ball off to him and he passed. I mean, they're getting everybody involved, right? They spread this football around. Yesterday was a whole lot of Luke Grimm, but he had the most catches with 4. The passing it wasn't great yesterday, but they completed 7 passes and won the game. And if that's not a mark of a good team, I don't know what is. So you kind of got a couple clunkers. They haven't been great last couple weeks. I have to say that. Not been excellent, all the way around. But they're winning football games, and now the Jayhawks are 1 game away from bowl eligibility. That is nuts. Texas throttles West Virginia. I mean, this was a critical game for Texas. Like, you go to 2-3, and we're basically facing the same situation we were facing last year with Steve Sarkisian. And a lot of the questions that were asked would be valid questions at that point. They came out from the word jump, from the jump, and they beat him pretty bad. It ends up being 38-20. That is not a mark of how close this game actually was. At one point, I think, let me figure out the largest lead in this game. I was keeping tabs on this. 28-0 is the lead they got with 4:22 left. And they were able to extend that once again out of 28. And then they give up, they give up a touchdown and got a field goal and they have a touchdown. It was too late anyway at that point. I mean, they had in the fourth quarter, they were up 28 points, right? Other part of this game, CJ Donaldson, really bad injury. Really hope that he is okay after that scary, scary injury. Bijan Robbins had a really nice game. I mean, Hudson Card, I give the credit to him for how well he played. Probably his best game. He played pretty well last year against ULL, against Lafayette. But this was a really comprehensive performance. Talking to Jonathan Davis this morning of Locked On Longhorns, he's like, people are wondering, should they go with Card, should they go with Ewers? Nah, man, it's Ewers. I know Card played really well, but Ewers is the guy that allows you to spread the ball around in a really significant way. I know Card did in this game, but like Ewers is the guy who just makes your offense more dynamic. We know that for a fact. Once again, love the way he spread the ball. This was Worthy's best game, 7 for 119, 2 scores. I've talked about Jatavian Sanders before. He gets the end zone twice. Like, that's a really good player that they've got there. Jordan Whittington got the ball. So they spread the ball out. West Virginia, man, like, it's just not they had some momentum. It's just kind of ran into a buzzsaw this weekend. Like, this is what Texas should be. They kind of kept this thing up for all 4 quarters. So it's pretty impressive. All right. I mean, I know we hit a lot there, so that's why we went 32 minutes on the show today. Give us your thoughts on the weekend in the comment section below. Let us know what you thought was the biggest result from this weekend and why it was the biggest result. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you guys tap that bell for notifications. We're basically 6 days, just now almost 7 days a week. We have a Sunday show, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then on Saturday mornings, I'm posting Prop the Top Off, a segment we do on Big 12 Radio where I create some fun props. This week, the best one I had was Jacob deGrom strikeouts minus earned runs against total touchdowns in the Iowa State-Kansas game. And the guys picked those on Big 12 Radio. It's a lot of fun. I put that out as a bonus episode on Saturday mornings, just something fun that you guys can have there in your feed. So basically almost 7 days a week of Big 12 content. Make sure you guys check that out. All right, that'll do for today's show. Once again, follow us on Twitter at LO Big 12. Subscribe, all that jazz. Till next time, my friends, as always, stay safe.